It is the third day with no power. The ice came through Tuesday night and took the lines down with it, and the house is sitting at 40 degrees inside. You have been through the pantry twice, the flashlight batteries are dead, and the county put out a notice to boil the water, which you cannot do because your stove is electric. None of that is the end of the world. That is an ordinary week gone wrong, the kind that happens somewhere in this country every winter. But the people who lived in these Oklahoma hills before the power lines came through went through worse than that every year of their lives, without one single thing from a store. So what did they know that we let go of? Today I am giving you 10 of those things, plain and step by step. Stay with me all the way to number 10, because that one is not a plant and it is not a tool. It is one rule about your own body. And it is the reason the old ones would stop on a freezing day and take a coat off on purpose when everything in you is screaming to put another one on. That is not toughness. That is one specific thing water does to heat, and it decides whether the other 9 save you or not. I'm Wes Kingfisher. I'm 64 years old. I'm of Cherokee heritage, and I was raised by my grandmother Ada in these hills of eastern Oklahoma, on the same few acres where I still live today. She taught me the plants, and she taught me her kitchen, and my grandfather and my uncles taught me the woods. 40 years on the powwow trail and out at the intertribal gatherings taught me the rest, from the northern plains down to the desert southwest. The old ones never wrote any of this down, so listen close. How does a family get through a hard winter with no truck, no store, and no wall socket? By knowing the ground they're standing on. Every one of these 10 is something you can walk out your own back door and put your hands on in most of this country, in most seasons. Not one needs a battery, a special order, or a thing you do not already own. And keep that coat in the back of your mind while we walk, because I am coming back to it, and it is the whole reason these 10 are in the order they are in. 10,000 years of testing. That is the guarantee on all of it. Number 1, the tree that is a pantry and a medicine chest. Walk outside and find a pine tree. In most of this country, that takes about 4 minutes. Now look close at how the needles come off the branch, because this part matters. On a real pine, the needles grow in little bundles of 2, 3, or 5, and each bundle is wrapped at the base in a thin, papery sheath. That sheath is what you are looking for. There's a tree called yew that folks mistake for pine, and yew needles are flat, and they come straight off the twig one at a time, with no bundle and no papery sheath, and yew carries a soft red cup on it like a berry. Yew is deadly. No bundle, no sheath. You walk away. But once you have got a true pine standing in front of you, you are looking at 2 different gifts on the same tree, and I am going to give you both. Now, what I just showed you at that pine tree is 1 page out of a book I put together. It is called The Native American Way, 101 Remedies, Skills, and Recipes that kept my people alive for 10,000 years. The backyard plants and exactly how the old ones use them, the teas and salves out of Ada's kitchen, the wild foods and when to gather them, the fire and water and shelter skills, and the recipes that fed people through every winter there ever was. All of it written down plain and step by step, the way I would say it to you sitting on my porch. It is $17, marked down from $47. $17 against 1 walk down the pharmacy aisle and 1 trip to the sporting goods store. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So, the 2 gifts on that pine. The first one is the green needles. Chop up a small handful of them and pour hot water over the top. Water that is hot but not boiling. Cover it and let it sit and steep about 10 minutes. Hot, never boiling, because a hard boil drives off the very thing you are after. That tea carries more vitamin C in it than a lot of citrus fruit does. And in a long winter with nothing fresh in the house, that was not a small thing to the old ones. It is exactly why they drank it. The second gift is the pitch, that sticky amber sap bleeding out of any wound in the bark. Pitch is glue. It seals a leaking canteen or a cracked bucket, and it will take a flame when every other thing in those woods is soaked clean through. My grandmother kept a jar of pine pitch on the shelf by the door her whole life, and there is one sitting on that shelf right now. All right, put your coat on. We are walking down to the creek because number 2 is the one that runs out first. Number 2, water, and how to find it in a dry country. Before I show you where it is, I am going to give you the rule that never changes, and I want you to hold on to it harder than anything else in this video. Clear water is not clean water. A spring running over white gravel can look like glass and still put you flat on your back for a week. So you boil it. A rolling boil for 1 full minute. 1 full minute, not 30 seconds. And not until it just starts to bubble around the edges. Now, finding it. The land tells you if you read it. Cottonwood, willow, and sycamore do not grow where their roots cannot reach water. So a green line running across a brown landscape is a creek, whether you can see the creek or not. Game trails run downhill and they run together, like little streams joining a big one. And where they join up is where the animals are going to drink. Birds fly low and straight to water at first light and again at last light. Bees do not travel far from it at all. Now here is the part I learned from elders out in the desert southwest, and I have used it since. You find a creek bed that is bone dry. You walk it until you find a bend, and you go to the outside of that bend, the side where the water used to cut hardest and dig deepest. You dig a hole about 1 foot wide, and you keep going down until the sand turns dark and damp. Then you stop, and you sit down, and you wait. That hole will seep and fill on its own. The first water in it will be muddy, so you let it settle, and you skim off the top with a cup, and then you boil it 1 full minute. There's one more way to pull water out of green country when there is no creek at all. Take a clear plastic bag, slip it over a leafy branch, and tie the mouth of it tight around the limb. Drop a small stone in the low corner so the water has somewhere to collect. A tree pulls water up out of the ground all day long and breathes it out through its leaves. And by late afternoon, you will have an inch or two of clean water standing in that corner. Use an oak, a maple, a birch, a willow, or a fruit tree. Never use a tree you cannot name because whatever is in those leaves is coming out in that water. And in winter, do not eat snow. Melt it in a pot or in a bottle you carry inside your coat. Eating snow costs you more body heat than the water in it is worth. And by the time we get to number 10, you are going to understand exactly why that sentence matters. Water is the thing you cannot do without for more than about 3 days. So it is the first thing the old ones taught the young ones, and it is the first thing I'm giving you. Number 3, the 4-season grocery store standing in the ditch. Cattail. That plant with the brown head on it that looks like a corn dog on a stick, growing thick around every pond and slow creek in America. Our people ate off that plant 12 months a year, and most folks drive past $100 worth of food on the way to the store. Now, the identification first, because there is a look-alike here, and it will make you sick. Wild iris grows in the same wet ground, and young iris and young cattail look similar to a careless eye. Cattail has a round stem, and the leaves rise out of a round base. Iris leaves are flat, and they come out of a flat fan base like a hand of cards, and iris never carries that brown head. So here's my rule, and I have never broken it. If there are no brown heads standing in that patch, I do not harvest that patch. Now, what you get. In spring, you pull the young shoots up out of the mud and peel them down to the white core, and you eat that raw or boiled. In early summer, the flower head is green and tight, and you boil that and eat it right off the stalk like a little ear of corn. A few weeks later, that head turns to yellow pollen, and you bend it into a paper sack and shake it. And what falls out is a bright yellow flower. Mix that half and half with regular flour for cakes. Then in fall and winter, when everything above the water is dead and brown, the food is down in the mud. You pull the fat root, wash it, break it up in a bucket of cold water, and work it with your hands until the water turns milky. Let it sit. The starch settles to the bottom. You pour the water off, and you dry what is left, and that is flour. One more thing, and it is important. Cattail cleans water, which means it holds on to whatever was in that water. So I harvest from clean ponds and clean creeks, never a roadside ditch, and never downstream of a feedlot. And the plant keeps on giving after the food is gone. That brown head breaks apart into a fine dry fluff, and that fluff is about the best tinder in the marsh, and it will take a spark on a damp morning when nothing else will. It also stuffs a coat, a boot, or a pillow, and it traps warm air the same way goose down does. The long leaves, dried and then dampened again so they turn flexible, twist into cordage, and weave into mats, and our people up in the north woods slept on cattail mats all winter long. Number 4, the small fire and the warm ground. My uncle used to say a big fire is for looking at and a small fire is for living by, and it took me until about 30 to understand he was giving me a lesson and not a joke. A big roaring fire burns half your wood by midnight and drives you back 6 feet. So you cook one side of yourself while the other side freezes. A small fire, about the size of a dinner plate, you can sit right up against. You can cook on it, you can dry your clothes over it, and it will not throw sparks into your bedding or light up the whole hillside. And you feed it without an axe, which is the part nobody tells you. You lay 3 or 4 long logs out like the spokes of a wheel, with just the ends touching in the middle. The fire burns where the ends meet. As those ends burn away, you push the logs in another few inches. That is it. No chopping, no sawing, no splitting, all night long. The old ones called that a star fire, and I've kept one going for 2 days without picking up a tool. And you light it with what we found back at number 1, a gob of pine pitch smeared on a stick, or a chunk of fat wood split out of the stump of a dead pine. Will take a flame and a drizzle when every other thing on that hillside has quit on you. That is why my grandmother kept a jar of it by the door for 60 years. Now put something behind that fire. A wall of green logs stacked waist high, or a rock face, or a fallen trunk. Heat goes out in every direction, and most of it goes to waste, but a reflector bounces some of it back, and you sit between the fire and the reflector, so the heat comes at you from 2 sides. And here is the old trick that gets you through the coldest part of the night. Build your fire on the patch of ground you intend to sleep on and let it burn down for 2 or 3 hours. Then rake the coals off to the side. Cover that hot ground with at least 4 inches of dirt. 4 inches, not 2. And put your bare hand down on it to test before you commit. If it is too hot to hold your hand there, you add more dirt and you wait. Then lay leaves or boughs on top of that, and you sleep on ground that will stay warm until sunup. Do not ever do this inside a closed shelter, and do not do it under a tent floor. Open air only. One last piece on fire. When you leave a camp, you do not have to leave the fire behind. Wrap a good live coal in a wad of punky wood or dry bark. Then wrap that loosely in green leaves or damp moss, loose enough that it can still breathe a little. Our people carried fire that way for miles rather than start over from nothing, and anybody who has tried to strike a fire in the rain with cold hands understands exactly why they bothered. Remember, I told you the old ones would take a coat off in the cold on purpose? Fire is about half the answer to that. The other half is still coming. Number 5, food that outlives the emergency. Now we are getting to the one I would take with me if I could only take one. Pemmican. This is our people out on the plains, and I have made it in a camp at 20 below with my hands so cold I could barely feel the pestle. Pemmican is dried, lean meat, pounded into powder and mixed with rendered fat, and it keeps for years with no refrigerator, no jar seal, and no electricity. Years. And the reason is simple. Two things spoil food: water and raw fat. And pemmican has neither one left in it. That is the whole secret. And it is the only secret. Here's how it is made, and I want you to take these one at a time. First, get lean meat and trim every single scrap of fat off of it. Every scrap. Fat left clinging to the meat is exactly what turns it rancid on you 6 months down the road. Second, slice it thin, about 1/4 inch, and slice it against the grain. Third, dry it low and slow in a dehydrator, in an oven propped open on its lowest setting, or on a rack over a low smoky fire, until the piece snaps clean when you bend it. It has to snap. If it bends, it is not dry, and you keep going. Fourth, pound that dry meat into a powder. Fifth, render your fat separately. That means you cut suet up small, melt it slow over low heat, and strain it through a cloth. Rendered fat, never raw fat. Sixth, mix about equal weight of meat powder and rendered fat. Equal weight, not equal volume. And that difference will cost you a batch if you get it backwards. Seventh, if you want berries in it, they have to be dried berries, never fresh. Then press it into cakes and let it set up hard, and store it cool and dark, wrapped in cloth or paper. A cake of that, the size of a bar of soap, will walk a grown man through a whole cold day. Kept cool and dark, it will still be good years from now. And I have eaten pemmican older than some of the folks watching this. You can eat it just as it is, standing in the cold, or you can drop a chunk in hot water with a handful of dried corn, and it turns into a soup thick enough to stand a spoon in. My grandmother made a version of it every fall out of whatever the men brought in, and there was always a wrapped cake of it in the truck and another one in the coat closet, because Ada did not believe in leaving the house unprepared for anything. My friends up on the northern plains carried it for weeks on the trail, and their people crossed country on it that would put a modern hiker in a hospital. Number 6, the remedy the modern world built an industry on. There's a tree growing along nearly every creek and pond edge in America, and the old ones went to it for a headache, for sore joints, and for a fever, and they were going to it for a very long time before anybody on this continent had a laboratory. Willow. And here's the part I love telling. The modern world eventually got curious about willow, took it apart, found what was in the bark, and built an entire industry on it. That industry sells aspirin. Now think about that for a second. The old remedy was not wrong, and it did not get proven wrong. It was so right that the whole world reorganized itself around it. And then the tree it came from got quietly forgotten, because nobody in this world can patent a tree that grows free in a ditch. Identification. Willow grows with its feet in water along creeks, ditches, and pond banks. The leaves are long and narrow, several times longer than they are wide, and on most willows they are noticeably paler, almost silver on the underside. The twigs are whippy, and they bend a long way before they snap. Harvest it right. Never cut a ring all the way around a trunk, because that kills the tree. Take a few small branches, take from 2 or 3 different trees, and leave the trunk alone. What you want is the inner bark, that green-white layer sitting under the outer bark, and you scrape it off with a knife. To use it, you simmer about a heaping teaspoon of the dried inner bark in 1 cup of water for 10 minutes. Then pull it off the heat and let it steep another 20 minutes. 10 minutes simmering, 20 minutes steeping. It is bitter, and a spoon of honey helps. Now, I am going to tell you the honest part, because a real teacher tells you the honest part. Willow is in the same family as aspirin. So if you cannot take aspirin, do not take willow. Do not give it to a child with a fever, for the same reason doctors stopped giving children aspirin. And if you are on blood thinners, leave it alone entirely. If you are on medications, have a word with your doctor before you add anything new. That is what my grandmother would have told you. and she would have told you once and then gotten on with it. And that tree gives you more than the bark. Those long, straight, first-year shoots, what the old folks call withes, make the strongest quick binding in the woods. Cut them green while they still bend, and you can lash a shelter frame together, hoop a fish trap, or weave a basket that will carry 50 pounds of corn on your back. Our people built whole houses out of bent willow, and not one piece of that house came off a shelf. Number 7, string out of a dead weed. Nothing in the woods holds together without string. Your shelter, your snares, your pack, your fishing line, the handle on the load of wood you are dragging back to the house. Buy a spool, and you are fine until the spool is gone. Learn this, and you never run out. The plants that give the best fiber are dogbane, milkweed, basswood inner bark, yucca, nettle, and even cattail leaves. And the best time to gather them is the dead of fall and winter, when the stalks are brown, dry, and standing there like they are waiting on you. Dogbane is the one I reach for. It stands about waist high with a reddish stem. It forks near the top, and in winter it is dry and brittle. One rule before we go further. Dogbane and milkweed both run a milky sap, and both of them are fiber plants only. You never eat either one. Now, the making. Break the dry stalk gently in 3 or 4 places along its length. Peel the woody core away from the outside, and what is left in your hand is a ribbon of fiber. Rub that ribbon between your palms to buff the loose chaff out of it. Take a bundle of fiber about as thick as a pencil lid, hold it, and twist it until it kinks over on itself, and put that kink about 1/3 of the way along instead of dead center, so your splices never line up in the same spot. Then reverse wrap. Twist the top strand away from you, cross it over the bottom strand toward you, and repeat that over and over, and the cord makes itself. When a strand starts running short, you lay new fiber alongside it and twist it right in. That is all there is to it. And I will tell you, a cord of dogbane, no thicker than a pencil lead, will hold more than you would ever believe from looking at it. The old ones made bowstrings and fish nets out of that weed, and those nets fed whole families. Once your hands know how to do it, you can make anything you need. A bowstring, a fish line, a snare, a carrying strap, a net, or the lashing that holds a stone head onto an axe handle. Sit down on a winter evening with a handful of dogbane stalks and a fire going, and in an hour you will have 20 feet of good cord and hands that remember how forever. We are 3 away from that coat now. Hold on to it. Number 8, the double wall and what goes under you. I have slept in a teepee at 20 below with our people out on the plains, and I was warm. Not surviving, not tough, warm. And that is because a teepee is not a tent. A tent is 1 wall. A teepee is 2. Inside the outer cover, there's a liner hung from about head height down to the ground, with an air gap between the liner and the cover. Cold air comes in under the edge of the cover, rises straight up that gap because warm air is already pulling it, and goes out the smoke flaps at the top, and it takes the smoke with it on the way. That draft never touches the person sleeping, and any moisture in the air condenses on the cold outer cover and runs down the inside of it on the far side of the liner instead of dripping on your bed. Our people out on the plains engineered that, and I have not slept in a modern tent yet that has matched it. Now, you can use that tonight in your house with the power out. Hang a blanket about 1 inch off a cold exterior wall, and hang another one over a doorway to close off one room. That air gap is doing the work, not the blanket. Same principle, same physics, 400 years apart. And here's the other half of shelter, and it is the half people get wrong. The ground steals your heat faster than the air ever will, so what goes under you matters more than what goes over you. Pile 6 to 8 inches of dry leaves, grass, or pine boughs where you intend to lie down. 6 to 8 inches, because it is going to crush down to about 2 inches under your weight. And 2 inches is what you actually needed. If you are building a debris hut with no gear at all, build it small. Small enough that your body nearly fills the inside of it, ribbed with sticks, and piled 2 feet deep with leaves. A big shelter is a cold shelter because you have to heat the whole inside of it with nothing but yourself. And think about which way the door faces before you build one stick of it. Never face the door into the wind, and do not face it straight away from the wind either, because wind curls around the back of a shelter and walks right in the back door if you leave it one. Set the opening sideways to the wind, about 90 degrees off of it. Put your back to a hill or a bank if you have one, and face the sunrise if the ground lets you, so the first sun of the morning lands on you at the hour you're the coldest you will be all day. Number 9, the pantry with no wall socket. My grandmother had a wall of jars, and I still have that wall of jars, and there is not one thing on it that needs electricity to stay good. Start with corn, which we call selu. You take dry corn and you parch it, which means you dry roast it in a hot, dry pan or in clean ashes at the edge of the fire until it puffs a little and turns brown and smells like popcorn. Then you grind it. A pouch of parched cornmeal and a cup of water is a meal. And our people carried it for days on the trail because it weighs almost nothing and it will not spoil. Beyond corn, everything in the garden can go on a rack. Squash, cut in rings and hung on a stick. Apple rings on a string across the porch. Green beans, threaded on thread and hung to dry, which the old folks in these hills call leather breeches. And there are 4 rules for drying, and they are the same for meat, fruit, and vegetables. Cut everything 1/4 inch thick, no thicker. Lay it in a single layer with the pieces not touching. Give it moving air, because moving air matters more than heat does. And too much heat cooks the outside shut and traps water in the middle. And test it by feel. It is done when a piece snaps or when it is leathery and you can squeeze it hard without a single bead of moisture showing. Then store it in the dark, in a cool place, in glass or paper or cloth. And for the first 2 weeks, you go look at those jars. If you see any moisture at all beating up on the inside of the glass, you pull that food back out and you dry it again. Any moisture at all. Now, about smoke. A low, cool smoke drifting up under a drying rack does 2 jobs for you. It keeps the flies off, which is the honest reason our people smoke meat in the first place, and it lays a thin skin down on the surface that helps the food keep cool smoke, not hot. If the meat is starting to cook, your fire is too close, and you raise the rack or you move the fire back. And do not overlook the berries. Wild plums, choke cherries, sand cherries, blackberries, spread on a rack in the sun until they go leathery, ground fine. Dried berries are what goes into the pemmican we made back at number 5. Simmered down with a little water, they make a thick sweet sauce that our people up on the plains put over just about everything on the plate. That garden of yours puts out more in July than your family can eat in July, and this is how a July garden feeds you in February. Number 10, the coat. Here is the one I promised you at the start, and it is not a plant, and it is not a tool, and I have watched it matter more than the other 9 put together. Picture a cold day. You're hauling firewood, or breaking ice on a trough, or walking hard through snow. You start out cold, and after 10 minutes you are comfortable, and after 20 you are actually warm inside that coat. It feels good. It feels like you are winning. And under the coat, your shirt is getting damp. Then you stop. Now here's the thing water does to heat, and it is the whole reason for this video. Water pulls heat out of a human body about 25 times faster than dry air does. 25 times. Not twice as fast, not a little faster. So the moment you stop moving, that damp shirt against your skin turns into a machine for cooling you down, and it runs all night, and it does not care one bit how tough you are or how good your coat is. And it does not take a blizzard to do it. It takes a wet shirt, a little wind, and sitting still. Men have gotten into serious trouble at 40 and 50 degrees above freezing on an ordinary gray afternoon, doing ordinary work in the yard. That is also why I told you back at number 2 not to eat snow. Snow going down cold is your own body heat leaving out the front door. And heat is the one thing out there you cannot go find more of. That is why the old ones took the coat off before the work started. Not after they got warm, before. And I will give you the rules the way they were given to me, one at a time. Take a layer off before you start working while you still feel a little chilly. Open your collar and your cuffs before you get hot, not after. Slow down, because if you are breathing hard in the cold, you are working too fast. And the old ones walk slower than you would think for exactly this reason. The minute you stop working, put that layer back on before you start to cool. Every single evening, dry your clothes at the fire in shifts so you are never standing there with nothing on your back. And wear wool or fur over cotton, always, because cotton holds water right against your skin and wool holds some warmth even when it is wet. Now look back across the other 9 with me for a second. What goes under you in a shelter? 4 inches of soil over warm ground, a reflector wall, a liner with an air gap, a dry shirt. Every single one of those is the same idea wearing different clothes. What touches you steals your heat. Wet cloth, cold ground, moving wind. And everything the old ones ever built was aimed at putting something dry and still in between. That is not 10 tricks. That is one understanding, tested for 10,000 years, and it shows up 10 different ways. I learned it standing in a doorway. I was maybe 11, headed out to the wood pile in January, bundled up like a bale of cotton, and my grandmother stopped me and made me take my coat off and carry it. I thought she was just being contrary. She was handing me the most useful thing anybody ever told me, and it took her about 9 seconds. That is how it always went with her. 9 seconds in a doorway, no charge, and 30 years before I understood what I had been handed. There are 101 of those in the book, written out plain so they do not die with me. The Native American way, $17, marked down from $47. Every winter that goes by, another elder who carried a piece of this is gone for good. $17 to keep your share of it in the house. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up. Give it a tap and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There's no rush at all. I'll wait right here. Pine, water, cattail, fire, pemmican, willow, cordage, shelter, the jar wall, and the coat. Not one of those came out of a factory, and every one of them outlived the people who handed it to me, which is the only kind of wealth I have ever trusted. Now, did your grandmother or your grandfather have a remedy of their own from any tradition at all? Put it down below. That is exactly the kind of knowledge that dies when nobody asks. I read every single one. Next time, I am taking you out to the tree my people went to when the corn ran out. Its inner bark is a food, and it is a medicine, and there is a 10-second test you can do with your own mouth that tells you whether you are standing in front of the right tree or the wrong one. Wado, my friends. That means thank you. Walk easy, and I'll see you down the trail.